But with the hostage deal, new hope is emerging that more hostages will be rescued. And that hope competing with the reality that Israel is set on destroying Hamas. So will the ceasefire help keep the U.S. safer? Joining us now is David Dezso, former U.S. Army Special Operations Green Beret and founder and CEO of the Banyan Risk Group. Also joining us, Lieutenant Commander Bryan Stern. He's an Army combat veteran and Purple Heart recipient who now runs Project Dynamo, advising companies on counterterrorism. Thank you both for your service to our country. Bryan, I'd like to start with you. We know you have contacts on the ground in Gaza. What are they seeing at this hour?
I think everyone, everyone's on the edge of their seats. Project Dynamo, we've done 680 of these missions in the last 24 months all over the world, from Russia to Ukraine to Afghanistan, all over the place. Over 7,000 people. Every one of these, every time you do this, it's not a recipe. Nothing is cookie cutter. So nothing's done until it's done. Both sides have people who are very extreme, and both sides have people who are very angry, and both sides have people who are trying to find peace. Everyone is kind of on edge. Everyone is has their own equities involved, and the voices of reason are all trying to make this happen. Is what I would say.
So, David, there's also this tragic feeling for those family members of hostages who will not be released, especially those of women and children and the elderly held in Gaza. How are they right now being supported, if at all?
Great to be with you. I think the challenge is there's a lot of unknowns. You've got hundreds of hostages. We don't know the level of care they've received, and we don't know who's alive and who's not. We've got a list of 50, and I think that's a progress. That's a progress, but at the same time, there's still a lot to be left on the table.
So, Bryan, one big question for people right now: how many American hostages will be released? You say they're the ultimate bargaining chip, and the fact that Americans are included may help the negotiations. How so?
Well, the hostage takers and terrorists and kidnappers and whoever else take hostages not because they think it's fun, because they serve a utility. The ultimate utility player in the hostage world is an American citizen. So, it's very telling that Hamas has not disclosed who they have, who's alive, who's not. There haven't been proof of life pictures where there's been people, holding up signs with date stamps and things like that we normally see in this kind of thing. So that's by design, though, that fear of the unknown. Today, we actually don't know who they have. We have a good idea. We know who's missing, but we actually don't know definitively. So the idea that they're kind of able to play those cards is good for them and bad for us, frankly.
So, David, I'm curious, how would you rate the Biden administration's handling of this incredibly high stakes negotiation?
High stakes this is the most complex hostage negotiation we've seen in a very long time. So, not to undermine anything, I think they're doing as good as they can do with what they've got. I mean, you've got multiple countries all represented that have hostages around. I think the challenge you have is that Hamas, their strategic goals in the beginning were to have thousands of Palestinians released, a naval and land blockade reduced from Israel, and Israelis moved out of the West Bank. They're now to tactical things, and they're now to a ceasefire, 3-to-1 ratio, 150 Palestinian children, and some fuel and some humanitarian aid. That is not strategic assets. They're down to tactical needs. So I think Hamas is in trouble. They're definitely having to refit and regroup and consolidate. But I think the challenge is when you look at any international negotiation on hostages, you have so many complexities, and when you have this level of damage and terror and unknown, you just have to go by day, and then let the intelligence picture kind of help you understand this. The Red Cross will get access supposedly to these hostages, so we'll probably learn something there. But again, with a tunnel system that they have, as robust as it is, there's a lot of unknowns that everyone's working with.
Oh, that certainly sounds the exact way the IDF has been looking and evaluating the situation as well. So, Bryan, you've rescued prisoners of war. You're also a combat veteran. After this first prisoner swap, do you believe it's possible for Israel to get hostages out by military force, or is negotiating with Hamas the only way out?
There's never one way there's a bunch of ways to do this. I will say that a negotiated release is always the safest way. That's safest for the hostages. That's safest for the rescue teams that have to go in and do it, and that's also safest for the bad guys. Right? They're on the receiving end of that lethal action. So a negotiated release is always the safest way, but is never the only way. Neither is negotiation, and those aren't the only two ways. There's a number of ways that we do these things, and every single one of them is hard. I think one of the big benefits of this release is the intelligence that we'll be able to collect from all the debriefings of how they were kept, what the conditions were, where they moved. All kinds of details will be gleaned as soon as the first batch come out, which will be very informative and very helpful also from an intelligence perspective. I think that'll be helpful.
Certainly. So, David, there's also this idea out there that if the first phase goes well, they could release up to 10 hostages a day going forward. This will keep both sides happy if more aid is coming in and more hostages are going out. Do you believe that will be the case?
I think as the journalist before said, the aid coming in is still going to be minuscule for what the needs are. You're talking about millions of people displaced. Hundreds of trucks don't change much of that quality of life. While needed, it still is a drop in the bucket. I think we'll see how Hamas deals with this if they actually are execute what they agreed to. And then we'll see. I think what they're going to look to do is regroup and refit and then consolidate. Remember, they've been fighting in underground tunnels, disjointed and fragmented. So there's probably a large bit of unknown within their fighting group of what they have available left. So the missile attacks towards Israel have diminished significantly, which demonstrates maybe supply shortages or inability to actually execute. So I think the longer, when they have this 4 days, that's their goal to get refitted and consolidated. But if they need more, then maybe they use a little bit more hostage release to gain more time.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Bryan Stern, David Dezso, thank you both for your service and for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving.